Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So we are nouns and we're discussing the Mu'arraf Billam from the parts of the Ma'arif. So again, where we in section 1, where we're discussing words, under words of ism, fa'il and harf. And now we're discussing ism. And ism has 4 characteristics in part 1, D-I-N-G, definite, indefinite, i'rab, number and gender. And the nouns and adjective section. And under definite, indefinite, you have Ma'arif and Nakirat. We're discussing Ma'arif, and we're discussing under Ma'arif, we're discussing the Mu'arraf Billam. So you have the Kalima, and the Kalima have Ism, Fa'al and Harf, the Ism, the Ma'arif, and here we're discussing Mu'arraf Billam. And that's why at the top here, we always have this guideline where we are words, noun, under now we are Ma'rifah and Nakira, and here we're now under Mu'arraf Billam. So we discuss how to add Mu'arraf Billam, the Huruf Shamsiyah, the Huruf Qamariyah. We also discuss the Hujjatul Wasn at the beginning of Alif Lam, how it's dropped in pronunciation, Alhamdu wal-Hamdu. Now we want to discuss how we translate this Alif Lam. In our primer, the part 1, level 1, we said simply what? How do you translate Alif Lam? The. That was all fine and well, but obviously it is a bit more detail. So this Alif Lam, okay, this Lam or Alif Lam, which comes at the beginning of nouns, it is of 2 types. Okay. One type is called Lamul Ahd. In Arabic, Ahida Ya'hadu Ahdan is to be familiar with. So one is Lamul Ahd, the Lam of familiarity or referential. What does referential mean? When you're referring to something which we are familiar with. So the first type of Alif Lam is Lamul Ahdi. The Alif Lam which is referential, meaning we're referring to something we are referring to something which we know of. Why do we know of it? Because number 1, it has been mentioned previously in the sentence. And a very easy example of this is the Quranic ayah, أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَىٰ فِرْعَوْنَ رَسُولًا. Allah says that we sent a messenger to Fir'aun. So Rasul is mentioned as a nakira prior, first. So we sent a messenger to Fir'aun. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the word Rasul again as Mu'arraf Billam. This is a referential Alif Lam, because Alif Lam is saying that this Rasul is the same Rasul that has been mentioned prior. That's one way the Lamul Ahad is used. Correct? Yes, second way is used is what? When the Lamul Ahad is referring to something where it has not been explicitly mentioned. But because the speaker and the addressee both know about what we are discussing, we still use this Lamul Ahad. So for example, if I say to you, have you learned the lesson? So I came in class or you came in class and the first thing I asked you was what? Have you learned the lesson? The word lesson, dars, has not been mentioned before, has it? But when I say the lesson, automatically both me and you click on, what am I talking about? The lesson of Nahw. Do you understand what I'm saying? If we have, for example, I told you the previous day, I want you to get photocopy the paper. I want you to buy a book, such and such a book. The next day, what will I ask you? Have you bought the book? Because we're all familiar with it.
It's not the other one because it's been mentioned before.
Well, it's mentioned a very long time ago. I guess you could count it as mentioned before. Yeah. How is the weather? What's the weather referring to? The weather outside our building. You can't say 35 degrees outside. I was referring to Saudi Arabia. Because we're talking about what we're all familiar with. Which is the weather in England. In Leicester, outside of our building. Do you understand? So the weather. Okay? This is called what? Like, for example, Hal hafizta dars. Have you learned the lesson? So a referential Alif Lam. When the Alif Lam is referring to something which has been mentioned prior, or to something which both the speaker and addressee are aware of, this is called Lamul Ahad, and this is translated as what? The. Yes? So basically in part 1, what do we do? The referential Alif Lam. However, there's something called Lamul Jinsi. What's it called? Lamul Jins. When the Alif Lam is used to refer to something not referential, but more general. It's called a generic Alif Lam. What is it by generic Alif Lam? There are a few scenarios. Number 1 is when I'm speaking about something on a whole. For example, Al-awladu ni'matun azimatun. So I'm talking about children. Even though I have al-awlad, I am not talking about these awlad here, or the awlad that I've mentioned before, or awlad that I know of, your awlad or my awlad. I'm talking about what? Awlad generically. Children on the whole, wherever they are, children here in England, children in India, children in South Africa, all types of children are what? Ni'matun azima. Anybody to have a child is what? A ni'ma azima. So generically speaking about this. So this in English, when you're speaking about something generically, you remove the article. You don't, you add the, you just leave it. What do you say? How do you translate this? Children are a great gift. You don't say the children. Because the refers to what kind of lam? What kind of ahad and lamul ahad and referential statements. And when you talk about generically, you remove the word the. Make sense? Intangible items. For example, knowledge. Because knowledge referring to what? General. Knowledge is a great ni'mah. However, if I'm referring to, so for example, a ni'mah. So a sabr. How do you translate sabr? As-sabru. Not the patient. But what do I say? Patience. Correct? Yes. If I'm referring to one particular patient, if I say, for example, the patience you showed when you were afflicted with this calamity, now is a particular patient. That's now lamul ahad. But generally speaking, the abstract concepts, intangible nouns, like ilm, knowledge, sabr, al-ilm, al-jahl, all of these things are what? Translated as without alif, without the. And you see a lot of these in proverbs, like you're doing in al-muntakhabat. Proverbs, like, what example? Can you think of one? As-sawmu junnatun. You won't say the fast is a shield. What do you say? Fast. Generally, the concept of fast is a shield from all other evils, etc., etc. Correct? Moving on, sometimes you can also have a lamun jins to refer to one unspecified member. Basically, it's almost the same as nakira. So, when you refer to any member of the species, unspecified. So, for example, al-mu'minu ghirrun. So now here, obviously from this sentence you can't tell. But we know from the context that this is a proverb. So what do I say here? If I say the believer, who am I referring to? No, if I say al-mu'min, what does that mean? And the believer. But when I say the believer is noble, is gullible, that means I'm talking about what? One specific person. Am I talking about one specific person? Yes?
You could be talking about the whole
Again, context. So let's say, for example, if I say a talibu mujtahid. Now, if I'm talking about one student, then I'm saying here, the student is hardworking, the one that we all know about, ahad, referential. If I'm talking generally, a student should be hardworking. But when I say a student, so even as alif lam in Arabic, I'll translate it as a. Do you understand? So you have a believer is gullible. Do you understand? Are you following me? So if you summarize, yes? So you have lam, alif lam on a word can either be lamul ahad or lamul jins. What is it again? Say it again. Lamul ahad and lamul jins. Lamul ahad is called what in English? Referential. What does it refer to? Something that has been mentioned prior or is known to both the speaker and the addressee. And the second type of alif lam is what? Lamul jins, called what? Generic lam. What does it refer to? Something species, a genus, something general. Or? Intangible nouns, good. Or? One member of the species. Okay? And all of this can be understood from context. What are we talking about? Yes? Now, turn the flip side. When you're translating, you also have to appreciate the target language. You can't translate everything because it's in Arabic into English. So for example, I don't have the lunch at the school before I eat the breakfast at the home. Would you say that? No. Because certain words in English, they don't have the even though they're referential. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if I say I didn't have lunch, which lunch am I talking about? Today's lunch. Isn't it referential? Isn't it known to both of us? But the word lunch doesn't have the with it. I'm going to have dinner. So you can't say, okay, well, if I said to you, translate lunch, translate into Arabic, I can't say akaltu asha'a. Because there's no tanween or no alif lam. I can't say akaltu asha'a. I have to add alif lam. Because the alif lam, the is not there in English, but in Arabic you still have to have it. Do you understand? So when you translate, and if I translate this from Arabic to English, I can't say, I ate the dinner. What do you have to say? You have to appreciate that English language. You have to appreciate both languages and translate, not literally, but appreciating the rules of both languages. So sometimes in English, some words don't have an article. So you have to then keep that in mind when you're translating. Following me? Yes? Okay. So you have alif lam, which is either what? Lamul ahad, which is referential. And this is why, as we mentioned before, like, فَأَصَى فِرْعَوْنُ الرَّسُولَ, or it's prior knowledge. For example, حَفِظْتَ الدَّرْسَ, or ya حَفِظْتُ الدَّرْسَ, I memorized the lesson that we're all aware of. Or it can be generic, called lamul jins, which encompasses the entire genus, the entire species, generally speaking. For example, al-awladu ni'ma. Or it can be a single member of the genus of the species. And it says here, al-mu'minu ghirrun kareemun, a believer is gullible. Why is a believer gullible? I explained before as well. That doesn't mean he's stupid, because he's a kind person. He should be a kind person and a good ethical person. So he doesn't think that people can be bad to him because he's not bad himself. So you don't think that way. So I give an example. For example, if you see a car window open, if you're a good person, you think, you know what? Or another example. Sometimes people, you go in the house, lots of shopping. You open the door and then you leave the keys in the door. So if you're a good person, you see that straight away. What do you think? I gotta knock, ring the bell, and tell the person your keys is in the door. Your keys are in the door. Because that's what you think. You're a good person. A person who's a robber or a thief, what do you think? If I take the keys and get in at night time and rob. So a believer wouldn't, because he's a good person, he thinks that everything, he assumes, it's hard to go beyond that scope to be like, you don't think evil, you don't think in a very bad way, because you don't operate like that. That's what it means by al-mu'minu ghirrun. It doesn't mean you be stupid and dumb. It just means that sometimes you just can't think that people can be so evil, and in that way they can deceive you. Okay? But in total, you understand what's happening? So today we discussed how to translate the alif lam, depending on whether it's lamul ahad or lamul jins. Any questions regarding that? Is that clear? And this will help you as you go along in translating al-muntakhabat or qisas nabiyyun, any other text you come about. Okay? Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.